It's all good.
Okay. Well, everyone, welcome back to a very exciting episode of the Storybox podcast. Today, my friends, I'm delighted to welcome Toure Roberts to the Storybox. Now, for those of you that don't know who Toure is, he's a best-selling author, 3 times best-selling author, that is. He's a businessman, he's a pastor, and he's a producer as well. Toure is most widely known for being the founder of one of the most influential faith empowerment congregations in the world today, along with his co-pastor and wife, Sarah Jakes Roberts. Many of you would know who she is too. It's called One, formerly One Church LA. His modern and cerebral approach to faith has attracted thousands to his physical campuses each week. He's got thousands of people that listen to his messages and his wife's messages too. He has a brand new book coming out, which I'm very excited to share with you all today. It's called Balance. I mean, how many of us need that in our life or trying to find it? Positioning yourself to do all things well. And I'm very excited to welcome you so much to the Storybox podcast today, Toure.
Jay, thank you so much. I appreciate all the great work that you're doing, and it's an honor to be here talking to you.
That means a lot to hear you say that. Thank you so much for saying that and for actually meaning it. I'm very excited to unbox more of your story today and your wisdom as well from my audience. And I know you're going to help so many people today. So I'm really looking forward to it. But before we dive further into all the incredible things you are doing, my very first question for you is, what does success look like for you?
Oh, for me, success is fulfillment. It is. I think that we are all wired and created for something and certain things, and we're designed to be whole and fulfilled. And so, regardless of what I do, if I am fulfilled in doing them, then I am successful. So, for me, success is fulfillment.
What are some things in your life that actually lead to fulfillment, and what is really fulfillment? Can we dive further into that?
For sure. Well, for me, I mean, I do a lot of things. Obviously, I've written books that have done well. Church has done well. Technology companies that have done well in the past, and all these things. But quite frankly, what I'm most excited about, and what fulfills me more than anything, quite frankly, is being a dad. Believe it or not. Sarah and I combined have 6 kids, and for me, getting fatherhood right is what fulfills me the most. I mean, obviously, being married, that's wonderful, but my highest, for me, it's just, there's nothing like being a dad. So that's, I know that's not necessarily the flow of what we're talking about, but when I think about what lights me up, it's knowing that I'm being a great dad and I've got great kids.
What does it mean to be a great dad?
I think it's to be in connection with your children. It's to see them. It's to know them. It's to listen to them, to learn. I learn more from my kids as it relates to wholeness and development, than I do in a lot of other places. And then look at this great responsibility that you have, this responsibility of shaping a human being, like the most precious and prized creation. And here as parents, whether it's myself or my wife or whoever, we've been entrusted with this shaping. And so for me, that's just fascinating. And to steward it well and to do it well really, really brings me to a place of fulfillment.
Were you prepared to be a dad?
Oh, great question. No. I wanted children, but man, there's so much to parenting. There's so much to stewarding the life of a human being. It's almost like, if you're into a pet, the pet is, nice and cute and fluffy, and but when you get that pet's got to be trained. You got to learn that pet's got to learn you. You got to lay rules down. You got to be smart and witty and invest money and time. And so no, to answer your question, I probably was less ready than I thought I was, but thank God for on-the-job training.
I'm not a dad, so I don't know what that's like yet. One day, hopefully, Lord willing. But yeah, I do know what it's like to train a dog or try to train a dog and have the conflicts that result in that. My dog, I think, is she's highly intelligent. So she kind of fights back against the training, and she did it when she was a puppy. hilarious. So we just let it go. But I'm not saying that's a great way to be a parent at all. But I'm curious, Toure, how have your kids taught you about balance?
Oh, wow. Well, in order for me to be a good dad, I have to be balanced. And, balance, one of the reasons why I wrote the book is that I think that balance, for the most part, is one of the most evasive concepts in the human experience. When people talk about balance, you hardly ever hear someone say, I'm so balanced, or, oh man, I've got balance figured out. You always hear them saying, man, I need to find balance. I need to find out how to balance in this area, et cetera. And so the approach that I take to balance is not about learning how to masterfully divvy yourself up, give pieces of yourself to the things that are important to you, whether that's business, marriage, family, whatever. But it's actually about learning how to become all of yourself so that you're not giving people slivers of you, you're giving people all of who you are. And so balance is not a discipline, it's more of a state. And even as the book takes further, it's actually a destination. And when we arrive to that destination, we then in turn are able to give our best to our kids, to our spouse, to our work, to our investors, whomever, because we become the best version of ourselves.
When you say destination, how long does it usually take? Is it different for each person, or is it a set time period for everyone?
Well, so in the book, I talk about balance being as a state and then also a destination. So I have three ways that I approach balance. A state of balance that is achieved because you arrive at the place or a destination of balance, and that allows you to be a balanced person. But to your question specifically, I believe that it comes down to how quickly you're able to work, first of all, to understand what balance means and to work the disciplines to get there. And so, if you're not going to, let's say if you struggle with quieting the noise in your life, or you struggle with, one of the chapters I have is about the power of no. If you struggle with saying no, if you're not willing to put in the work, you're going to be out of balance, and it's going to take you, a bit more time to come and arrive at that state. And I might add, sometimes a bit more frustration and pain. So it depends on the person, kind of like what you alluded to.
I wanted to get to the power of no a bit later on. You kind of led me there a bit quicker, but I'll get to it in just a moment. But I wanted
Just tell me no. Just tell me no. You're working.
No. We're not.
Right now.
I'm practicing it right now, live on through this conversation. We'll get to it in just a moment, I promise everyone. But I wanted to go back a little bit for my audience to give them some context of who you are, why you decided to write this book in the first place, and why now?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, this book is about a year late. It's about a year late from its original release, interestingly enough. And I think now that I'm looking at what the world has gone through and what people are searching and seeking, I think it was pushed back by divine providence. But I guess the best way to answer that question is to illustrate something that happened to me in the process of writing the book. So I'm writing the book. You're an author, so you understand this. I get halfway through the book. First of all, that is a milestone. If you're like me, writing a book is the most taxing thing you'll ever do. It's amazing, it's liberating, but it takes everything you have and then stuff that you don't have. You know the process. I get halfway through writing the book, and my agent, and I sent it to my agent just to kind of let her know the progress. My agent doesn't reply via email. She calls me, and she's like, Touré, this is not your best. And I'm like, ooh. I'm halfway through this book, and she's produced, or she's a literary agent who's worked with everybody, Tony Robbins, you name it, all the big book people. She's Oprah. I mean, everybody. So when she tells you that this is not cutting it, it's not cutting it, and so I literally, I pushed my date back. Watch this. I scrapped that whole 30,000 words. I scrapped it and started from scratch. Now, here's what I learned. And interesting enough, I was writing about balance. The thing is, when it comes to everyone's seeking to be their best, right? What I learned through writing the book is that you actually have two bests. You have the best that you are based on where you are, and the best that you are from the place of balance. And so I realized that, one, it was a topic that so many people were trying to figure out, me included, one. And then two, I also experienced that you can be very successful, you can do very well, but your life, you're doing well in one area, but everything else oftentimes is falling apart. And I believe that you can actually have it all. And so me experiencing working hard, putting something out there, but it not be my best, was almost like my own introduction to the reality that if you are going to take your life to its potential, then you're going to have to discover balance. And it is not about juggling responsibilities. It's much deeper.
How did you know that the book was actually done and that you had, I guess, given your best? Was it a feeling inside that you had?
Oh, absolutely. For me, every word, every sentence, every paragraph has to hit. Every chapter, it's got to connect. You know what I'm talking about. It has to be there. And it's almost like, some people call balance, or what we're describing as balance, sometimes the closest word that they can get to it is a flow. Man, I was in the flow. I was in the zone. Like I could not lose. I could not miss. And once I took the advice of my literary agent, who all she said, let's watch. Here's the thing. She didn't tell me what to do. She just said, that's not your best. In other words, I've seen you in the zone. I've seen you in the flow. I've seen you in a higher, greater state than this. You got to go back and find it. So when I watched this, didn't let ego or hurt feelings, I got 30,000 words. No, you know what? I want to be better, and I trust her eyes. And so I go back and I started writing, and it wasn't easy. I'm not going to say that it just opened up. I had to do some things. I had to posture myself. But what I did was I found balance. I found the flow, and the words came, and the research came together, and all these things came together. And I was at one of my getaways in Newport Beach. And I remember, man, that last sentence, you just like, boom, and it's done. And of course there were edits after that or whatever, but it's almost like you gave birth to something, and it's out. And now all you have to do is wipe up the mess and present it.
I can relate to your story because my very first book is coming out September 27th of this year, which I'm very excited about. And it took a lot of energy, right? And I think the very first draft that I wrote, I thought it was so terrible that I decided to basically shelve it and then not even bother going back to it. And then a couple months later, after I had an idea for a second book, that's when I decided to revisit the first one. But then I deleted everything and just decided to start from scratch. And I'm like, okay, God, I need you to give me everything you want me to share here. This is your story that I want to write about and put it on the page. And it was exhausting. I didn't know what balance was during that process. Believe you me, I was like all one side, not the other side, not even in the middle, just all this other side, man. And it was this crazy whole experience in getting it finished. But when it did get finished, and I went through the whole stages of editing and then the publisher's process of editing through everything. And when you finally get to that end stage, it's like, that's what it is. That's cool. It's like a sense of peace in a way. It's like this calming feeling. Whereas before you're kind of anxious in a way, but now that anxious feeling is gone. That's the way I describe it. I don't know about you.
No, it's true, Jay. And what I'm moved by in what you said, and I did it as well, was watch this. I trusted having nothing. You said you deleted all of this. A lot of times we crutch on what we have, and we forget that we are creators, which means that if we can get balanced, if we can get aligned and tap into creativity, we can go from nothing to something like that. And now you've got this satisfaction of knowing that, man, I birthed something from nothing. And I think that that's a lesson for anyone listening or watching, what have you. Nothing is not a problem. A lot of times we look at nothing and we think nothing is a problem. No, you know what? Nothing might be that platform that takes you to a whole nother level, because you don't have something blocking the thing that can be the thing that takes your life to a whole nother level.
Yeah, it's like artists, they start with a blank canvas and they have to create. So I think for authors, it's a similar thing. They look at the blank page, and then if they did have words on the page beforehand, then they kind of allow that to get them stuck, and they constantly mull over it, because that's what happened to me. Like, I'm like, no. I know this is bad, but I'm too afraid to delete this because I don't know what it's going to be. But I think you're 100% right, is just start from scratch once again. And I guess for me, it was trusting God. It was trusting be able to just give me all the words that he wanted to say, and not the other way around. But it ended up being what it is today, and I'm so grateful for it. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you about your book and the whole process that you went on to getting the book finished is the vulnerability factor. When would you say was the most vulnerable moment for you in writing the book?
Oh, for me, I realize that I can't connect with people unless I am naked. And so I really, this is going to sound a little weird, but when I write books, I typically write them literally naked. My process, and I'm by myself, of course, like that, but my process is jump in the shower, pray, meditate in the shower, get out and put a robe on. But I'm literally there naked, because I think that that's what resonates. But in the book, in the actual book, I talk about something that, sometimes successful people don't often share deeply about. And for me, it was about some failures. And I talk about how I went through, there was a season where I don't know if you're familiar with DJ Khaled, but he's got this song called All I Do Is Win. And I went through a season where, I just winning. I sold a show to ABC, just winning. The wholeness, did well, found love and marriage and blended a family. Church is going great. Everything's going good. Real estate's going great. All that kind of stuff. So I went through this season of winning. And then I went through a season of losing. And I had like three losses. I'll talk about. One was a business deal that went sour, and another was the same show that I sold to ABC. They decided not to take to series, and so I thought that there would be a continuum of those resources. And then a nonprofit that I took over was just having chronic problems, and it wasn't going as I planned. And man, I went through this season of just. Man, I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull back up, and I would look at old videos of myself and read news articles of my accomplishments and whatever, and I would just scratch my head and say, man, what happened to that guy? And I realized in that process that I knew how to win, but I didn't know how to lose. And I believe that God was teaching me how to lose, but not be a loser.
Oh, that's good.
And there's a difference between losing and being a loser. And ultimately, it's about perspective. And so I'm very vulnerable, very transparent about that process. And that section is called Losses and Lessons. And I talk about, just the things that I learned, because, I have a saying, and that saying is never waste a perfectly good failure. Never waste it perfect, because within that failure, if your perspective is right, if you don't allow it to make you become a failure, and I've got a whole thing about that in the book, but if you don't allow a loss to make you a loser, and you can maintain your equilibrium and look at it right and do an autopsy on that failure, man, you're going to find your future is in that thing, right? Everything that you're after is in your proper dissecting of that failure.
I have a saying too, and I love your saying, by the way. I think my saying kind of ties into your saying too. But in failure, we learn humility. It's one of those, the most important things that we need in our life is humility, because when we're constantly winning, we constantly feel the ego creeping back up and just taking control of our life. And God doesn't want us to be in that constant state of being proud and arrogant, self-righteous, because that affects our relationships. It affects all areas of our life. So he brings us to the losing side of things. And he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to bring you here. I want you to learn more humility in your life, but I'm also going to make other things, this state of losing, as an amazing experience for you, because you learn more in the losing than you ever will in the winning. So I think that's really a perspective shifter in of itself, to be honest.
And so true and so necessary. My, and I talk to my congregation about this a lot. I get nervous in success because in success, particularly massive success or success that ascends very, very quickly, the average person doesn't have the discipline to keep themselves grounded when their promotion is creating an ascension in their life. And so I get nervous in success because I realize now that the onus is on me to humble. What does that passage say? Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, so that in due time he can lift you up. But a lot of people want success. You want to be successful, and there's nothing wrong with that. But do understand that with success and with elevation, it will require internal self prompts to weigh yourself down. You have to go, if you're being elevated high, you got to lower yourself low. And the average person, without going through these seasons of humbling that you're describing, doesn't have that type of insight.
Definitely, man. I mean, yeah. When would you say, when you least expected God to show up in your life during those failures that he did, and it showed you, or it changed your perspective of who God really is?
Good question. I can't recall a specific incident, but I can recall a specific encounter, the encounter in my spirit. And for me, I just remember one day looking out at night, and I had this beautiful view, and there are ships and yachts, and you can see the lights of the ships and the yacht, and it was beautiful. But then I just raised my gaze up a little higher, and there were stars, and the moon was there, and it brought life into perspective. As glorious as all those things were, these creations of man, could even the greatest man who created those greatest things do one of those star things? And so God always has reminders for me along the way that there's nothing higher than him. And if you want to have sustainability, then you got to keep your eyes up, and you got to remember that he's just so far above all those things. And that brings me perspective, and it's very inspiring personally for me.
What is the midnight sun?
So the midnight sun is actually a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon that happens in the earth where the majority of the day is light, and so the sun never sets. It just kind of dips onto the horizon and then it goes back up. And I thought that was a beautiful analogy, engaging, beautiful analogy to describe balance, because balance as a place is the place where the sun is always shining. Now, what do I mean the sun is always shining? It means that light is always there. And so you've got truth there. You've got the truth about who you are. And I contrast that with night and how night invades. And, in the Christian context, obviously night is Satan, night is the devil. And he casts a shade that perverts the way you see yourself, the way you see God, the way you see life, the way you see others and everything. And so when you come to the place of balance, none of that is there. Everything is clear. There's no night there. I see myself for who I am. I see God for who God is. And all of the nonsense and the noise of night doesn't exist there. And so that's balance as a destination. And that's a place we have to live. To bring it into spiritual terms, we're talking about ultimately the manifest presence of God. You know what I mean? Where you don't have to, there's no warfare in the manifest presence of God. It is all it's underneath you, and so that's what the midnight, just a long version of
that's cool. I love that. So speaking about balance as three things, right? So you got the state, you got the place. What was the middle one? I might have forgotten that one.
And then the other thing was, it was about being balanced. So, yeah. so balance defined as state, place, but then being balanced is something different.
So the state of being balanced, and then the place of getting to the place of being balanced, I think is pretty cool. Why do you think so many people are striving to be in the state of being balanced, but falling short all the time? And then the ones that are failing to reach the place of balance, why do you think we all fall short there?
I think that there is ignorance is a strong word, but I just mean lack of knowledge. I think that there is a misunderstanding about balance itself. Because I think that most people approach balance by saying, I just want to effectively, I want to be good in all these areas, and so they look at balance as a discipline. And that's why, when you read books on work-life balance, which is great books out there, they're talking about time management, they're talking about being there in time for dinner, your kids, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think it misses the point. Because I can be there, but not be there, right? I can be at home in time for dinner, but I'm at the dinner table, I'm on my phone, or even if I'm not on my phone, I'm thinking about work, or I'm anxious about something, I'm stressed about something. And so I think that most people approach it from a do perspective and a discipline perspective, when I really think it comes down to a being perspective. And if I myself am balanced, because I have arrived at the state of balance through various disciplines, then when I show up at the dinner table, I'm the best version of me. There's a chapter in the book called "There's No Team in I," and obviously that's a play on the term "There's no I in team." And one of the things that I talk about there is the importance of solo time. Now, I'll be honest with you, and my wife is away right now for a few days away. I had my time about 2 weeks ago. And honestly, it's hard for us to go because, one, we have a phenomenal marriage. We enjoy each other. We've got the responsibility of our kids and the responsibility of our businesses and all those sorts of things. And so it's difficult to go because I have to say that I am not abandoning wife, kids, work, investors. I am actually ensuring that they receive the best of me. And so now we let each other go freely. Even our kids let us go freely because they realize that the dad that they're going to get back, the mom that they're going to get back, the leader that they're going to get back. No, go, because I'm actually going to benefit from you going and getting balance, because balance is going to return you to us a better version of yourself.
Is that when you're talking about the importance of rest, is going away and having time to yourself?
Rest is definitely a big part of it, but rest is not all of it, because you can rest and never tap into your soul's quest and thirst for the state of balance. So rest is definitely a part of it. I talk about the 5 signs of imbalance, weariness being one of them. So that's certainly part of it. But you just, you catch your breath just to posture yourself to pursue the state of balance. So rest is definitely part of it, but it's just a beginning place.
I think we live in such a busy society. I mean, we're always doing things. There's so many distractions around us. And I think we forget to rest because it's always, hustle culture, do this, do that. Otherwise you're going to miss out, FOMO, all those things. I guess fear is fear one of the 5 things of being unbalanced?
Well, certainly fear will have its way. Five signs of imbalance. One is a lack of vision, stagnation, weariness, jealousy, envy, believe it or not, and a declining thought life. And so fear, when you're, see, I talk about the difference between tiredness and weariness. Tiredness is normal. We're wired to be tired. That's why we go to sleep at night. Weariness is different, though. Weariness is, I call it in the book, something like the gravitational pull down to the tarmac of disaster. Because when you're weary and you don't deal with your soul, you can put yourself in some pretty tricky situations. Your decisions are going to be off. You'll say things that you can't take back. Your integrity will begin to slip. And so weariness is the byproduct oftentimes of when you didn't address it at the tired level, right? And so that's back to your point. This is why rest is important, because, man, you get imbalanced and like, why am I slipping? Why am I thinking these thoughts? Like I've been delivered from that. Like what's going on here? Well, no, you're weary. You didn't allow your soul to be restored. You didn't pursue balance. And I've got strategy in the book to help you to identify that, and then practices to get you out of that rut before you hit the tarmac of disaster.
What is one strategy that someone can follow right now?
For imbalance.
For imbalance in the state of weariness, like identifying the weariness and then getting out of that place of weariness.
I think that you have to have the faith to stop. I think that many people have the faith to go. I step out on faith. Well, what if faith is not about stepping out? It's about stepping back. And a lot of people, particularly busy and successful people, don't think that they have the luxury to step back or to stop. And so oftentimes I've learned that it takes sometimes even more faith to stop than it does to go. You would be surprised. The word Sabbath, in scripture, and we're obviously all called to take Sabbath. But if you study that word real good, that word doesn't mean rest. That word, watch this, it means to cease. To cease. What a powerful word, because you can rest and not cease necessarily. No, this means to like shut it down. Our Jewish brothers and sisters, we have a hospital here in Los Angeles called Cedars-Sinai, and on the Sabbath, all of the buttons in the elevator of that hospital are compressed so that you don't even have to lift a finger to touch the floor that you're trying to go on, because it is all about ceasing. And so I think that 6 days you work, 7 days you rest, mathematics, it's about 13% of the time you are supposed to cease. I mean, bring it all the way down. Now, the beautiful thing about ceasing, if you allow me to I'll put on my pastor hat now. Psalm 46, you've seen it. Be still and know that I'm God. There's that word again. Cease. When you cease, knowledge, revelation, truth, food, empowerment, all that will come to you. And so I would say to the person who is weary, have the faith to stop. If you want to expend any energy, take the last amount of energy you have and expend it in delegation. And once you delegate your important tasks, then you stop. Turn that phone off, shut it down, get off of social media, cease, so that God can make himself known.
I love that. That's powerful stuff. I'm trying to get better at having more of the faith to just stop at certain times of my life, but it is difficult and it does take a lot to actually stop, I've noticed, but I think I need it. Otherwise you get burnt out and you get very unbalanced, which then affects every single other area of your life, as we've been talking about. And you kind of led me back to what I wanted to finish off with, which is basically becoming better at saying no to certain things. How can we, firstly, why is no important? And secondly, how can we become better at saying no to things?
No is important because of the expensive nature of your yes.
Mm.
Your yes is expensive, and no is not a curse word. It's not we treat no like it's some damning word. You know what I mean? But it's not. No protects you, and what it protects more than anything is your yes. Your yes is very expensive. Another thing that's important about no is that no sets up boundaries. There's some people that it sets up boundaries, and it also qualifies relationships. There's some people in your life, and your relationship only works because you always say yes. And so that's not even really an authentic relationship. It's really a one-sided relationship. And sometimes people are so desperate for company and connection that they sacrifice themselves to please others. And so the main thing for me, the main reason why no is important is because no protects you. How many times have you, said yes only to realize later that, man, this was expensive. I committed to this thing, and man, something told me maybe I shouldn't, but I did. And now watch this, I'm unavailable to something that I would have rather invested my yes into because I didn't say no. And so no is everything. I have maybe this is aggressive, but I believe in it. I think that you ought to have a 90 to 10 no to yes ratio in your life. And you're like, what? 90% of things that come my way, you ought to say yes. Why? Again, because your yes is expensive. And you've only got so much of you. And so I protect the value of my yes by putting out no's. No. Why? Because my yes is expensive. So when I give my yes, I want it to matter. I want it to be meaningful. And so, there's a lot that we can say about it, talk about it a lot, but, and sometimes you have to give a no after you've given a yes. And that's a tough one too, because, I'm a firm believer in standing by your word, right? And being true to your word. You've heard it said before, you were raised on this, you're only as good as your word. And I believe in that. That is true. You should not be a flaky person. You should honor your word. But sometimes if your word is going to dishonor you, or if your word is going to be untrue to you or disloyal to you, and sometimes even when you've given a yes, sometimes you have to come back and say, you know what? I am so sorry. This is not my character. This is not who I am. And I know I made this commitment to you. But unfortunately, if there were any other way, I would do it. But unfortunately, I cannot do it. And I've had to do that. I had to do that recently with a really good friend. I had to back out of something because, there was some information that I did not know when I said yes. That came to me later on. Circumstances changed. Hey, man, I love you. I'm not trying to be a flaky person, but I'm not even going to let my previous yes lock me into something. I reserve the right to give a no if necessary.
I think a lot of people somehow they say that no is rejection. And so that rejection hurts them. And no one likes being hurt when someone says no, especially depending on what the circumstances is, like saying no for a relationship sense, going out, saying no for a business sense, saying no to speaking with someone. There's all these areas that, we quite often can overthink, which creates imbalance in our life, because that imbalance is saying you're worthless because this person has said no to you. And that's just making you in this damning and stuck state of being that you shouldn't be in. And so I love how you said that your yes is expensive and the 90 and 10% thing, but you've got to also protect your time as much as you possibly can, because your time is expensive too. And that's where the yes is also comes into it. You're giving, this is why I'm so appreciative of your time, Touré, because I know how expensive it is for you. And so I want to be of value to that yes in many, many ways. So hopefully that made some sense for people, but just bouncing off you.
No, it makes a ton of sense. No is, you think life is a negotiation. We have to get out of the fear of letting somebody down. I think that you ought to be graceful when you say no. I don't think that you ought to, make it devaluing. But life is about negotiation. We negotiate all the time. Sometimes you go to a computer and, sometimes you'll go to a news article and they get you to click on it and they tell you no unless you subscribe. You know what I mean? So life, everybody, no is a part of life. And no, I think it's so important. At the end of the day, it is protecting your yes and your time, like you mentioned.
Well, speaking of your time, my friend, I do want to be respectful of it. I am very grateful for your time today, and I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. I've got 2 quick final questions for you, if you don't mind, to end this conversation off. This is a new question that one of my guests actually gave to me, and so I can't take credit for it, but I want to ask it to you because I'm very curious to know your response. But what is the current plot in your life story at the moment that you're currently in the middle of?
God giving me a new name. I even think, honestly, with this book, some of the things that I'm doing in business right now, God reserves the right to establish you in a new identity, and not a new identity like you are complete. You're no longer yourself. When I say identity, when I say name, it is the forward-facing image that God gives you in the earth for the sake of impact and ultimately His glory. And so God hides in certain seasons, and He reveals in certain seasons. You're concealed; other seasons you're revealed. And so the current plot right now is, I'm waiting to see. I know that God is up to something as it relates to my impact based on my image, the reflection of His image in today's day and time as it concerns my life. And I am sensitive enough. This is why no is so important now. I'm sensitive to guard it, to protect it, and watch this, to accept it. Because sometimes you're afraid of new things, greater things, different things. And so I'm posturing myself, I'm balancing myself so that I will be in line with this new chapter.
That's really good. Where do you want people to get a copy of your brand new book? It's called Balance, Positioning Yourself to Do All Things Well. Where do you want them to get a copy, connect with you, Touré, before I ask you the final question?
Yeah, they can get it at thebalancebook.com. It's on all my socials, Touré Roberts. And the book is going to change their life without a doubt. But even some of the content, some of the conversations that I'm having around the book, like this one that we're having, if they link with me, if they follow me, they'll have access to all those conversations. But the book is going to change their life.
I have no doubt about that, to be honest. It's going to go absolutely crazy. Cannot wait for people to go and get a copy of it. Touré, this is my all-time favorite question. I love asking everyone at the end of all my conversations. It is a hypothetical one. I asked your wife this last year, and I loved her response. So I'm curious to hear yours. It is a hypothetical one, but I want you to imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how in the world they got it all. We'll call it magic for the sake of argument. But they've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
Oh, wow. This is so cliche. I hate that this answer is so cliche. But I want the film to say and show that I truly made all of my life, the best parts of my life, not about my life, but about the lives of others.
It's a perfect send-off message. I love it. Thank you so much, Touré, for your story, your wisdom, and your advice. Go and get a copy of his brand new book. But thank you so much, my friend, for joining me today on the Storybox podcast.
Jay, thanks for having me. Blessings, my friend.